Have you ever stopped to think about what you have in common with, say, a giant redwood tree, or even the bacteria on your own skin? Well, today we're diving into the one thing that connects all of it, all of life, the cell. It's the absolute fundamental unit of everything, and honestly, the story of how we even found out about it is just incredible. So let's just start with a really big question. What are you really made of? And I don't mean skin and bones and all that. I mean, what are the actual fundamental little bits that make you, well, you? The answer is somehow both way simpler and way more complicated than you might think. And our understanding of this whole hidden world, it didn't start with some grand, perfectly planned theory. Nope. Like so many huge leaps in science, it all started pretty much by accident. Just one person's curiosity, a homemade microscope, and a boring old piece of cork. Okay, so our story begins way back in the 1600s. It was this amazing time of scientific curiosity. And with the invention of the microscope, a brand new lens was turned on the world, revealing this reality that had been totally invisible until that very moment. Check this out. This drawing from 1665 is a total game changer. It was made by a scientist named Robert Hooke, and he was looking at a super thin slice of cork through a microscope he actually built himself. What he saw was this honeycomb structure, all these tiny little compartments. You know what they reminded him of? The small rooms or cells that monks lived in. So he called them cells, and the name just stuck. Now, it might seem like a simple observation, right? But just think for a second about how absolutely revolutionary this was. For the first time ever, someone had actual evidence that living things weren't just one solid mass. They were made of separate, tiny units. This single idea was the spark that would eventually ignite the entire field of modern biology. And Hooke's discovery was just the beginning. A few years later, this guy Hooke sees living, swimming little cells in a drop of pond water. Wild! Then, fast forward to the 1800s, and discoveries start coming thick and fast. Robert Brown spots the nucleus, the cell's command center. Then Schleiden and Schwann put it all together and proposed that all plants and animals are made of cells. And finally, Virchow adds the last crucial piece of the puzzle. Every single cell has to come from another cell that already existed. See? Science is totally a team sport, just played across centuries. So all these discoveries, right, spanning almost 200 years, they weren't just a random collection of facts. They were all pieces of this giant puzzle. And when you put them all together, they formed one of the most important ideas in all of science, a fundamental rule for everything that's alive. And this is it, the cell theory. It's so beautiful in its simplicity. Okay, number one, all living things are made of cells. Got it. Number two, the cell is the most basic fundamental unit of life. And number three, the kicker, all new cells come from cells that are already there. Seriously, every single part of modern biology is built right on top of this foundation. So this kind of shows the two fundamental strategies life uses to get by. On one hand, you've got unicellular organisms like bacteria, where one single cell is the whole creature. It does everything. But then you have complex, multicellular life like us, where trillions of cells get really specialized to become nerve cells or blood cells or bone cells, all working together like a huge, perfectly coordinated society. To really wrap our heads around how these cells work, let's just imagine that a single cell is like a bustling, microscopic city. It's got a government, it's got power plants, factories, even its own sanitation crew. So let's take a quick tour of this amazing little metropolis. All right, first up, City Hall, the nucleus. This is the absolute command center. It holds the DNA, which is basically the master blueprint with all the instructions for everything the cell will ever do, from growing to making repairs to replicating. Seriously, nothing happens in this city without an order coming from the nucleus. Next up, a city's gotta have power, right? Well, the mitochondria are the city's power plants. They're constantly generating this stuff called ATP, which is the energy cache that pays for everything. This is what's powering your muscles when you run, and it's powering your brain as you're listening to me right now. Without mitochondria, the whole city would just go dark. Every city needs industry. It needs to make things. That's where the Endoplasmic Reticulum, or just the ER for short, comes in. It's this massive network of factories and highways all rolled into one. It manufactures vital things like proteins and lipids, and then the ER's highway system ships those products exactly where they need to go. And finally, you have to keep the city clean, or everything grinds to a halt. That's the job for the lysosomes. Think of them as the waste disposal and recycling crews. They hunt down and break up invaders and old, worn-out parts. When they're working well, the cell stays healthy and young. When they slow down, well, that's actually a key part of how we age. But hold on, not all cell cities are built the same. Plant cells, for instance, have to stand up tall against gravity, so they have this super rigid outer cell wall that our animal cells just don't have. And since plants make their own food from sunlight, their cells have chloroplasts. They're like tiny solar panels. We animals get our energy by eating, so our cells don't need them. Now, beyond that plant and animal divide, there's an even more fundamental split in the living world. It really all comes down to complexity. Life basically uses two totally different blueprints for its cities, a really simple one and a much more complex one. And this table really lays out the difference. On one side, you have prokaryotic cells, like bacteria. They're small, they're simple, their DNA just kind of floats around in a region called the nucleoid. There's no real city hall. And they don't have all those fancy departments like mitochondria. But eukaryotic cells, the kind that make you up, they're bigger, they're way more complex, and they have that proper nucleus and all the organelles we just toured. And here's what that minimalist prokaryotic design looks like. See? There's no defined nucleus, none of those complex little organs we saw on the city tour. It has everything it needs to survive and absolutely nothing more. It's just simple and efficient, and this blueprint has been wildly successful for billions of years. So we've toured the cell city, we've looked at the blueprints, but why does any of this tiny microscopic stuff actually matter? I mean, what does it have to do with your day-to-day life? Well, turns out, everything. Here's the real takeaway. Every single thing your body does, breathing in and out, thinking a thought, just lifting your hand, it is all the result of trillions of these tiny cell cities working together in perfect harmony. Your body isn't a thing, it's a nation of cells. And your health is just a direct reflection of how well that nation is running. Which leaves us with one last kind of fascinating thought to chew on. You experience the world as a single person, a single I. But you are, in fact, a walking, talking community of trillions of individual lives. So, if that's true, what does that actually make you? Thanks for exploring that with us.